I've gotten absolutely hooked to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, which is crazy because I don't really go to my way to play CRPGs. If I'm gonna play a turn-based role-playing game, I typically just play D&D with the boys. But Rogue Trader understands that no video game can fully replace the authentic experience of playing a tabletop RPG with a group of friends, so it doesn't try to. Instead, it doubles down on the RPG elements that it can control to create a highly immersive experience that will completely hook you if you let it. I can't get enough of the game's story, characters, and gameplay. Recently, all I've been doing is playing Rogue Trader, or when I'm not playing Rogue Trader, I've just been thinking about playing it. I constantly find myself wondering what's going to happen next in the story, trying to decide how I should build my character or companions in my next playthrough, and thinking about how my playthrough would be affected if I'd made different decisions. Now, if you're familiar with Warhammer 40k novels, then what I'm about to say might sound like absolute heresy to you, but I think Rogue Trader is the best 40k story out there, and because the story is so important, all the footage in this video is going to be from the prologue and Act 1, so you can experience the entire game authentically if you decide to pick it up. Rogue Trader isn't just the best 40k story because its writers are brilliant, but it also does a phenomenal job of presenting the narrative to you in every possible medium it could, completely immersing you in the experience in a way that a book, movie, or show could never achieve. The game has a series of boss fights and cutscenes that form major climaxes in each act, but the writers and developers have also done a great job of meticulously presenting information through character dialogue, environmental storytelling, and item descriptions. And I'm not talking about descriptions on random weapons or armor like in Souls games. I'm talking about fleshing out the story in places where it actually makes sense, like in letters, transmissions, and other forms of written communication. This type of presentation allows the writers to craft an enticing mystery for the player and feed you clues as you play the game. But all of that is just how the narrative is delivered to you. What is Rogue Trader actually about? Well, long story short, the game is about you, a citizen of the Imperium who has recently become a Rogue Trader. Whether you were previously a criminal, noble, or sanctified psyker in the past, it doesn't matter because once you've been granted the title of Rogue Trader, you can officially do nearly whatever you want, especially by Imperium standards. With the story being centered around a Rogue Trader as the main character, it offers a lot of leeway in what factions are introduced and how you can interact with them. As a Space Marine or member of the Astra Militarum, you'd probably never even consider allying yourself with a heretic or Xenos, let alone use their technology. But as a Rogue Trader, you can do all of those things and more. Anything is on the table. In fact, one of the strongest aspects of the narrative is that depending on your choices, your playthroughs are gonna vary. You can play the role of the dogmatic imperial citizen, iconoclastic idealist, or just go balls deep into heresy. These choices allow you to shape how your companions view you, which companions you keep and who you find, how certain encounters will play out or which encounters you even get, and of course determine the ending to your story. I really appreciate when games do things like this because they create a narrative reason to replay the game. It's a relatively simple trick, but a lot of modern games that tend to focus on live service or seasonal content are unable to tell good stories because the narrative isn't really a focus for those games. Another thing that I really enjoy about the story is the pacing. Everything you do contributes to the overarching narrative that is established in the prologue, but each arc does a fantastic job of introducing new and unique problems and adversaries to deal with. The game features the most variety of Imperium, Xenos, and Chaos factions since Dawn of War, and it slowly introduces you to each of them, making sure that you're never overwhelmed by everything that's going on. This is important because it allows the writers to do what they do best, which is to completely immerse you in the adventure of being a Rogue Trader. But with all that being said, you can't have a good story without great characters, and Rogue Trader's characters are all top tier. I often find that the best stories are the ones that focus on their characters, kind of like the sponsor of this video and this channel's first sponsor ever, The Way of Renegades. The Way of Renegades is a flintlock fantasy novel written by Steve Wall that has an amazing cast of well-written, memorable characters and features one of my favorite magic systems in all of fantasy writing. If you're interested in playing Rogue Trader or you've already played it and enjoyed its story, then give The Way of Renegades a shot because Steve is one job application away from working at Owlcat Games. He really cooked with this book. The links to Steve's website, Amazon, and Audible pages will be in the description below. But as I was saying, yes, I absolutely absolutely believe that all of the characters in Rogue Trader are all top tier. Just like the player character, they all have their own backgrounds, goals, flaws, and personalities that make sense for them to have, and this all makes them very memorable characters. I never found myself wondering why a character would ever say or do something. Every action that they took made sense for that character to take based on everything that the game had presented to me up to that point. If you want to be a heretic, not every one of your companions is going to be happy with your actions, but at the same time, there are dogmatic characters that you can manipulate onto your side. My favorite companion has to be Sister Argenta, a member of the Adeptus Sororitas who joins your retinue in the prologue. For all intents and purposes, she's a sister of battle through and through, faithful to the Emperor, scornful of heretics and Xenos, etc., but there's also an air of mystery about her. As I progressed through the game and her story unfolded, I never questioned why she did the things that she did because the narrative had done a fantastic job of showing me who this character was. And honestly, I'd love to share more about this character and her story, but I truly believe that it's just something that's worth experiencing on your own. My least favorite character has to be Adira, but it has nothing to do with how she's written. Her story's pretty good, and she's a great character, but she's just really dangerous to have in your party because she's an unsanctioned psyker, which basically means that she's just a ticking time bomb of warp fuckery. Speaking of actual gameplay, let's pivot over to everything else that makes Rogue Trader as addictive as it is. First things first, the game absolutely nails the 40k atmosphere, music, audio design, and style. And I've already mentioned that Rogue Trader offers great narrative replayability, but the game also does a fantastic job of providing in-depth character customization with tons of different ways to build your character. This provides a gameplay incentive to replay the game because the way you tackle combat is going to vary on how you've built your Rogue Trader, and it's probably going to be different on every playthrough. Obviously, your character build is going to determine what you do in combat, but it's also going to shape your party as you try to utilize characters to fit certain roles. The party consists of 6 characters, your Rogue Trader and 5 other companions. There are more companions than there are slots in your party, so not only do you have to build your character, but you also have to build your team. Your Rogue Trader's build and your party composition are really important because you not only have to succeed inside of combat, but outside of it as well through a variety of skill checks and dialogue options. For example, having a character that focuses on being a big, strong tank in melee combat coincides with having high athletics outside of combat, unlocking opportunities to further explore a map. Your companions help you fill in the gaps, like how you can make Sister Argenta, who is likely already going to have a high ballistic skill, be both one of your ranged DPS in combat and your demolition specialist outside of combat, allowing her to disarm traps and open locked doors or chests. Or maybe you want to be the guy with the gun who does all the damage, so you don't even run Argenta because you don't want to double up on rolls. Kind of like how the story utilizes every inch of available game space to deliver the narrative to you, the gameplay in Rogue Trader forces you to use every available gameplay advantage you possibly can to succeed in combat, especially in unfair difficulty. In unfair difficulty, you basically have to take advantage of every mechanic to include cover, line of sight, formations, ambushing, buffs, debuffs, momentum, melee superiority, parry, dodge, and extra turns. The game throws a massive variety of enemies at you that challenge you to think about how you build your characters, companions, team composition, and dictate how you approach each encounter. If you're the kind of player who likes to min-max character builds, then you're gonna love Rogue Trader because the game provides so many options for you. And if you aren't, then you can always tone down the difficulty or learn the game so well that you find success running whatever builds you want to run. Your choice of homeworld, origin, and archetype dictate the many talents, abilities, characteristics, and gear that are going to be available for your character, and although your companions start with their own various backgrounds, you choose how they're built as well. The developers have done a great job of making your choices both inside and outside of combat extremely important and relevant to succeeding in the game. Plus, there's just so much game to be played here. If you're focusing on just the combat in the game, a full playthrough may run you a little under 100 hours, but if you're reading all the dialogue and item descriptions, then you're looking at a 200-hour playthrough. Like I said before, I don't really go for isometric view, turn-based games, but Rogue Trader really impressed me. I look forward to completing my unfair playthrough and starting a new one with the grim darkness setting turned on. In other words, I'm looking forward to playing this game in Iron Man mode, where you can't save scum, and if you run into a total party kill situation, your run is over. The last thing I want to add is that Rogue Trader isn't perfect. Other than fixing bugs, there are two things that I'd love to see the developers address in a future sequel, because I don't see them implementing this feedback in the current game. I'd love to see more voice acting, because the voice acting that we do get for each of the characters is great, and it just leaves me wanting more of it. But that's just a minor pain point. The one thing that completely breaks my immersion is the plethora of loading screens that you have to sit through. I really wish that each of the game's planets or zones were explorable as an open world, very similar to something like Baldur's Gate 3. And hey, I understand that both of these requests would probably require a much larger budget than what the game had, so as I said before, I hope that this gets added in a sequel or whatever the next 40k CRPG they make happens to be. I don't think the game will have any problems continuing to be successful, because good games honestly just find a way to market themselves. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about the game in the comments. As always, this has been Jeficus, and I'll see you in-game.